Good afternoon. It's November 6th at 1:30. We're here as the Planning, Housing, and Parks Committee. Councilmember Fanny Gonzalez is here with me in person, and we have Councilmember Juando, our third committee member, here virtually, as well as the district council member for the planning area, Councilmember Mink. Welcome. We are here for our fourth meeting of the committee overseeing this master plan, and we are here to essentially go back and review and finalize outstanding items that were discussion points, many of which the planning department and the Department of Transportation to the applicable extent and our council staff worked together to do some follow-up, to do some additional diligence, to try to follow through with some thoughts and feedback on the committee members' questions, comments, and concerns, as well as the district council members. So that's what we're here to do. We're going to go through the packet item by item. The goal here is to finish this today so that we will have a recommendation to the full council that will be scheduled accordingly, and we'll take it from there. So with that, let me turn it over to Ms. Dunn and council staff. You can walk us through the packet, and we'll turn to planning staff as needed to explain some of the recommendations and their thoughts on those recommendations.
Great, thank you. Good afternoon. We are in the fourth work session for this master plan, and we are here to do follow-up items. There's a staff report that contains all of that information, but we are going to start with circling back to some of the transportation recommendations, and for that I'm going to turn to Mr. Kenny.
Good morning. Stephen Kenny, council staff, I guess, for the record. So, we've got a bunch of, or a few sections of new language here as requested by the committee to address certain concerns, and I'll walk through them item by item. So the first one is adding a plan-wide recommendation for grade-separated connectivity across US 29 for bicyclists and pedestrians. This was spurred on by the conversation about the specific pedestrian crossings that were being kicked around to connect the two sides of the Verizon property, as well as to connect Paint Branch High School. We'll dive into those in particular later. This is just a high-level commitment across the plan in order to provide better connectivity across US 29. You'll see the MCDOT and planning language, which are substantively very similar. MCDOT's language dives a little bit more into parameters of that should be safe, convenient, comfortable, accessible, and to fit contextually within land uses across each approach to the connection. Council staff recommends adopting MCDOT's language as those parameters fit in line with a lot of other plans and council intent. But the planning language, while a little more high level and less prescriptive, gets at the same end goal.
Should we turn to planning and then to DOT just to explain your positions, and then we can hear from council colleagues to see if there's an interest in moving forward with one or the other or any recommended changes?
Yes, briefly, Clark Larson with Montgomery Planning. As you can tell, these statements were written independently, but they are coming to the same point, but we are in support of MCDOT's language.
Great. Well, take yes for an answer, it sounds like. Okay. Any concerns on that? It sounds like we have consensus, so we will double tap the consensus and let's move on.
Great. So the next one is diving down now into the district recommendations, particularly this one for the Old Columbia Pike and Musgrove Road Activity Center. And these are recommendations that were, this was an idea brought forth by MCDOT to provide better, in their comments to the original plan draft, to provide better connectivity over US 29 between map segments 8B and 9. That's the two sides of, or that's around where the Verizon property is, north of Musgrove Road. MCDOT's language includes two such connections, and while the planning language specifies just this one connection across US 29. I will flag that Verizon submitted language additional to the planning language via their attorney, That language adds additional parameters to any development review that would result in this pedestrian crossing, to specify that it should be part of only major development applications, and should be through a public-private partnership. Council staff recommends adopting the planning language without the additional language from Verizon, as we believe that this is a level of specificity that is best dealt with in the development review process and would, by that process, very naturally be worked out anyway.
Okay, any comments from planning or from DOT?
I'll start. Tanya Stern, Acting Director, Montgomery Planning. We support council staff's position. We think our language is appropriate, and as noted, the additional recommendations from Verizon goes into a level of detail that isn't necessary for a master plan and will be considered as part of the development review process, including the questions about proportionality.
Sounds like planning appreciates the courage and conviction to agree with them. So we went with DOT before, unless there's any objection from Councilmember Jawando. We will support planning's language on this one per the council staff recommendation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and again, substantively very, very similar. So just nailing down specifics here. Next, moving on to the Old Columbia Pike and Briggs Cheney Activity Center. MCDOT and planning here are now addressing two different items. MCDOT's language, by request from the council and from council staff, provided some language which would create a pedestrian crossing over US 29 to connect Paint Branch High School directly to the new activity center at Briggs Cheney. We'll deal with that one first. Council staff recommends not adopting this language, despite the fact that we did request it at first. We went back and spoke with MCDOT and with planning folks, and came to the conclusion, or at least on council staff side, that this would be duplicative of the existing plan to connect Paint Branch High School via the existing right-of-way on Briggs Cheney Road, and that these would be so close together as to be redundant, and that we should continue prioritizing and focusing on the Briggs Cheney Road connection.
Any comments from planning or from DOT? No? Okay. Without objection, we will accept that as well.
Great. And thank you for MCDOT for providing that language so we could have that conversation. The second bit for that particular activity center would be the request from council staff and from the committee originally to conduct traffic calming work along Old Columbia Pike and Briggs Cheney Road to accompany the side path and bridge expansion that would be done there. Council staff requested this in order to sort of round out the pedestrian comfort and safety experience along Briggs Cheney Road, as it will be the sort of center of this future activity center. And to that end, council staff recommends adopting the planning staff's proposed language for traffic calming work along that corridor.
Great. Any comments from planning or DOT on that? No? Okay. Without objection, I think we'll accept that as well.
Great. And then again, taking the other side of the Briggs Cheney Activity Center, this is you'll see that it is basically the same language as this previous change we included, but because this corridor crosses across two activity centers, we needed to change the language in both district recommendations. So this is mirroring that previous language and recommending to conduct traffic calming work along Briggs Cheney Road, taking the west side of Briggs Cheney Road Bridge, and all the way to the ICC. So it's the same stretch of road, just the different district.
Great.
And council staff recommends accepting this language.
And we'll turn to planning.
Yes, Clark Larson again with
Larson.
Montgomery Planning. I just wanted to point out that these corridors that we're talking about traffic calming are consistent with the pedestrian master plan focus, so we're trying to bring in those recommendations as well. So we made sure that we were focusing the priorities for traffic calming, bike and pedestrian improvements on these roads in particular, and that is consistent with your recently adopted pedestrian master plan.
Terrific. We want to be consistent, so that's good. Okay, without objection, we will accept that.
Great, and that's all for me. I'll turn it back over to Ms. Dunn for the Columbia Pike Corridor zoning recommendations.
And I just want you to know that it's not always this easy to find consensus, but you've done a great job in your first foray into this.
Rookie luck or whatever.
Yeah,
that
exactly. I was going to say, you're thinking to yourself, they told me land use was very complicated and difficult. Ms. Dunn.
Now we get into the next part. So we're now on, it's the second section, it's page 5 of the staff report. And this has to do with the Columbia Pike Corridor and 3 of the 4 activity centers in that corridor. When we had met before on October 23rd, the committee reviewed some of the initially proposed zoning in the planning board draft and instructed council staff and planning staff to look together and consider where some of the proposed CRN, commercial residential neighborhood zoning, could be changed to commercial residential town zoning, and where densities might be modified slightly to ensure that if an applicant were to seek total density or full redevelopment potential, they might use the optional method of development to do that, which would provide public benefits to the community. So planning staff submitted a letter. It's on circles 1 through 8 attached to the staff report. But particularly there are 3 zoning tables, one for each of the activity centers, and those are on pages 6, 7, and 8 of the staff report. I think one bled over to page 9. And what they do is they do change proposed CRN zoning to CRT because that is the zone that allows for optional method development, and then increased total and or residential density or FAR by the smallest increment necessary of 0.25. Which could result in the trigger for optional method development and public benefits. We can go into any of those in detail if you're interested, but council staff suggests the committee support these zoning changes as submitted by the planning department.
Well, thank you. First of all, it was a very good council staff recommendation reflecting the idea of optional method development and the goal of community benefits and seeing what could be achieved. I appreciate council staff and planning staff working collaboratively offline to figure out what makes sense, including to make sure that we got it right, including the additional heights that needed to be adjusted modestly, 10 feet in a few cases, in order to achieve the density, and also reflecting that there were a few sites where this just didn't make sense, and they didn't need to be included in that, and really needed planning staff's expertise to help to arrive at that answer. So I personally appreciate it. I think that this was very thoughtful. I think that it helps us to enhance the goal of the plan. I don't think this is a change to the plan. I think this was an enhancement to further the goals of the plan, and so I'm very much in support of the recommendation. Councilmember Fani-Gonzalez.
I agree with the chairman.
All right, well, let's just stick to that. Councilmember Joanna, you want to get in here?
Sure, I can agree with you as well, and also appreciate the collaboration, and I do think this is an enhancement and is in line with the rest of the plan. So thank you.
Hear, hear. Okay, well, let's accept that 3-0 from committee members, and appreciate the work and collaboration.
Great, thank you. We are going to move on now to the third section, which is an exception to kind of everything we just talked about in those zoning tables, because there was one property in those tables, which is the property 2131 East Randolph Road. And this was, again, a property that we discussed on, I think at the October 23rd, maybe it was October 30th meeting. And this is one, again, where we reminded the committee that we had received testimony, both in opposition and in support, for the proposed rezoning of this property when you had the public hearing. And we've received correspondence accordingly since then, both in opposition and in support for the planning board's recommended rezoning for this property. It is at the corner of a major intersection that basically is the central point of the activity center. And at the discussion that we had, the committee requested, and Acting Director Ms. Stern requested also to come back to the committee with proposals for different zoning for this property if not the planning board draft's recommendation or council staff's recommendation, which was actually to go ahead and give it a total density of 1.25, again, to get public benefits if somebody were to redevelop on this property. And those options are on pages, I think 11 and 12 of the staff report. And they basically provide you different levels of zoning that could happen. R200 is what is the current zoning on the property today. There's a townhouse high density option. There's a CRN, commercial residential neighborhood option. It has zero commercial, is the only mixed use zone that can have zero commercial. It's not available in the CRT zone. You must have at least a 0.25 of commercial in the CRT zone. CRN does not allow for optional method. So if this were to redevelop, it would go to DPS and not to the planning board for review, and there would be no associated public benefits. And then you see the CRT of 1, which is the planning board draft's recommendation, and the CRT of 1.25, which is council staff's, which would possibly result in community amenities and community public benefits. And so I'll open that up for questions from the committee.
Yeah, well, I'll just start. First of all, thank you. There's collaboration here as well. We had a few options on the table last time. Colleagues indicated their initial preferences. You went back and introduced a new option here. The new option being CRN, which would maintain the housing that was part of the CRT piece and some of the benefits there, as you noted. Going to the THD zone, restricts the housing that is there. It is much more dense than what's currently available in R200, but about half, give or take, of what would be available in the initial zone. So I appreciate offering that up. I can turn to colleagues here. If district council member who weighed in last time wants to weigh in, I'll give her an opportunity to do so, and then I would like to hear from committee members as well. Councilmember
Thank
May?
you very much for to planning for going back to the, not going fully back to the drawing board, but for looking for some more options for us that could be responsive to what the community has been lifting up for us, and also in line with our housing goals. So I much appreciate it, and happy to support the option noted, the CRN option. Thank you.
Councilmember Jawando?
Sure. Yeah. I just a question also, but first want to appreciate the additional options. We always like more options. So thank you. This was a tough one. I think we've talked about this before, that this is an area that needs more commercial opportunities. It needs more community benefit. Also, just like the whole county, we also need, obviously need housing. And so just so I'm understanding this, the new thing in the mix here on page, whatever that page is of the packet, the table 4 is the CRN, which does not have any potential for commercial use, correct?
Correct.
Right. And the CRT, which was the council staff, 1.25, explain, just bear out the difference for me again.
Sure. So both are CRN zoning, which would mean that they have very pedestrian compatible use or development standards. So they have those similar form standards that are very flexible and provide for a really pedestrian-oriented environment. The CRN does not have an optional method attached to it. It's all standard methods, so anything coming through for an approval under the CRN zone would go straight to the Department of Permitting Services for approval, would not be reviewed by the Planning Department or Planning Board. CRT, if what's requested is any even tiny amount above a 1 FAR, and 10,000 square feet, but this large property, that would happen pretty easily. But anything even slightly above a 1 FAR under the CRT zone would become optional method, and it would require public benefits, and it would have to go through the planning board for approval. So it would have that look at it. And like I said, CRT zoning doesn't allow you to have zero commercial because it really envisions a complete community zone. It wants some teeny amount of commercial to be available. Now, the developer actually doesn't have to bring it forward, right? It's just an option. So if you had a CRT with a 0.25 of commercial, you can do up to 2.25 FAR of commercial, but you're not required to. Under the CRN, you just don't. There's no option for it.
Right. And the owners of the property wrote us saying they were in support of a change to CR. Have they spoken to this latest update?
So they did not weigh in on the optional method component. The bump took 1.25 for optional method, but they did weigh in as late as, I think, October 30th, saying they supported the planning board proposed mixed-use zone for the property. This is the Potomac Conference, yes.
Right. And that's also on the chart here at the 1 point.
It's the fourth one down, yes. CRT
Yeah, the fourth one down.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
In this 1.25, again, the reason you're proposing that is because it kicks in the public benefits and potentially.
Yep.
Without a lot of, yeah. So I appreciate the compromise, and I want to hear what other colleagues think. I do think, I'm very familiar with this area. I lived off of Randolph Road for years in Coleswood. I drive by the church. I think going with the CRs, CRN or CRT is the right, to your point, because of the pedestrian. There's a lot of activity there with the church. It gets used a lot. I know we heard testimony from members there. They're concerned about making sure it remains safe. So I think this is good movement on that front. We do need the housing. I would like to keep the option for some public benefit. And so having thought about this more, I think I'm leaning more towards council staff's recommendation. But would like to hear from colleagues, especially since, we're not talking about that much big of a difference at this point in the, what's allowed. So that's where I am now, but open to be swayed, but thank you.
Sounds good. Let me turn it to Councilmember Fanny Gonzalez.
I am so happy that you're open to be swayed, because I think you should go for the CRT as we discussed previously. I am going to stick to it. I'm going to stick with the planning staff, and I think it's the right thing to do to achieve that complete community that we want in this neighborhood. So that's where I'm going to be at.
Okay. Well, I am going to vote to support the CRN, deference to the district council person and the compromise that was reached, but it sounds like there's a 2-to-1 vote for CRT 1.25, which is the council staff recommendation. So that would be a 2-to-1. I just want to confirm that with you, Councilmember Jordan.
Yeah, well, I think the only one that tried to sway me was Councilmember Fanny Gonzalez. So, but no, yeah, I think that's where I'm leaning. Just because I think it allows the best built environment possible there. And again, this is going to be determined based on what the owners do. There's a lot of factors here. I like that it would come back to the planning board. So there's a lot of reasons I think I am going to go with Councilmember Fanny Gonzalez and with the council staff recommendation.
I respect the point of view, respectfully, voting the way, for the CRN. And so it'll be 2-to-1, 2 for the CRT at 1.25, which kicks in optional method development, and 1 vote for CRN. And I assume Councilmember Mink would like to be reflected as being here and voicing her preference for CRN. I see her nodding. So if we could include that in the packet, I think that would be helpful. Okay. Well, we have a committee recommendation then on that item, 2-to-1.
Great, thank you. Yes, and we'll make sure we note all of this discussion in our council packet. We're now going to the 4th item in the staff report, the no net loss and displacement conversation. And this did evolve on October 30th. it was Councilmember Mink who suggested that these two issues be discussed further. She posed two questions. One was whether in the development of the zoning recommendations an analysis of no-net loss had been conducted, and then second, whether the plan had sufficient language to protect against displacement as properties redevelop. And as you'll see in the staff report under Section 4, planning staff has provided a breakdown of existing units, potential units based on the change in zoning, and the potential for regulated affordable units under redevelopment. We can go into those in detail, but as they show, the plan-wide has existing around 5,000 dwelling units. 105 of those are MHP units. Those are the only regulated affordable units in the plan area, 105 units. The rest are what we think of as naturally occurring affordable, but they are not regulated. Anyone of any income can live in those units. So again, existing is 5,000 units. The potential maximum under zoning is around 19,000 units, and required MPDUs under the recommended zoning would achieve about 2,500 units. This is a return of about 51% of the current units today would come back as regulated affordable units, meaning they would have to be income tested, and they would be secured for 99 years. And then we have information that covers each of the three districts in the plan area. The Columbia Pike Corridor District, which only currently today has 92 units, it could return up to almost 7,700 units, and required MPDUs would be almost 1,000 units, which is almost 10 times what they have today, returned as MPDUs. The Main Street District has about 1,000 units existing today, maybe up close to 1,100. Maximum potential there is around 6,300, and required MPDUs from that again is almost 1,000 units. And this would again be an increase of almost 89% of the current units coming back as MPDUs. And then the fourth district is the residential neighborhood district. That's the district very top of the plan area to the north and the very bottom of the plan area to the south. Very much built out as residential today. Existing is 3,900 units. Maximum potential under rezoning is 5,000. You can see those are closer together than the other three districts because we're really looking at established neighborhoods. So the changes in zoning to those areas were not dramatic. The required MPDUs then coming out of that is around 600, and that returns about a 16% increase, the current units to MPDUs in the future. I can stop there and I can answer any questions, or we can ask planning if they have any. If not, we can keep going.
Yeah, I think let's, if we could, turn to planning. Maybe Ms. Scavone, who's joined us at the table, can speak to this, because, you know, we hear a lot about this. I'll just note some of the things that we have heard, particularly from the correspondence from the county executive. The solution to the problem, if there was a problem, would be to dramatically increase the density. Because, I mean, that's the other way to solve the issue. And so could you just speak a little bit to the no net loss, to addressing naturally occurring affordable housing with new housing, and how we balance the meeting our housing targets and the clear housing crisis that we're in with the concern about loss of potentially naturally occurring affordable housing?
Sure. Lisa Gavoni for the Record Planning Department. So first, one thing I want to correct on the record is, and I'll work with Ms. Dunn, but there actually is more income restricted affordable housing than just the MHP property. There's some located in Arborcrest that has MPDUs, and Willow Manor at Fairland, of course. So we will make sure that we correct that for full council. So the question about naturally occurring affordable housing comes up every single master plan that all of us have worked on, and it's a delicate balance between incentivizing future growth, but understanding that these units are resources to the community. Oftentimes they are older, as exhibited here, and they're going to reach the end of their useful life one day. And we have to use this master plan to guide the type of housing and the development that we want to see in the future. And that's what we're trying to do here, is we're trying to create that balance, but also guide the housing in the future to make sure that everyone's living in safe, affordable, decent, quality housing. And so that's what we try to do with our recommendations. As we all know, in previous master plans, like the Veers Mill master plan, we worked with those property owners on phasing, on right to return language. And we didn't have that here. All the property owners were noticed, but we don't always get They don't always come to the table. So unfortunately, we have to figure out how to guide this 20 to 30 year master plan to really get to balance that equation. So what we try to do here is we try to include language to strive for no net loss of affordable housing. We realize that it's a big goal. It's a big goal in every master plan. As you remember in Veers Mill, when we did it, we increased the density 4 times. It went from 500 units to almost 2,000 in order to get that equation to make it work so it's economically feasible. Here, it's strive. It's a little bit weaker than require, but we still think that when any of these properties should come in for planning department review during the development review stage, we will be looking to make sure or try to get no net loss of affordable housing. To achieve master plan compliance in the development review process, you have to have, the project has to fit the language in the master plan. And that's what we're trying to do here is we're trying to create flexibility for a 20 to 30 year master plan, but also balancing our housing priorities.
Appreciate that. So the short of this is planning is very comfortable, very excited about what this plan supports. I'll note just from my perspective, unrelated, but related to a certain degree to this, we have a nonprofit preservation fund that the council has expressed its initial support for that I've been working on for several years that will be launched soon. We're waiting on the funding to be returned, and but that is intended to help our nonprofit partners to preserve naturally occurring affordable housing. But I'll note 2 things. One, it is never recommended, was never recommended, is not going to be recommended that we have a fund to support all current naturally occurring affordable housing to be preserved, because that is not the best outcome in certain cases. Half is a number that has been used a lot. If we could preserve half of the existing naturally occurring affordable housing, that's probably a healthy mix. This plan essentially is aligned with that. But 100% stasis, 100% status quo, so to speak, with naturally occurring affordable housing, we're probably not going to reach our housing targets either. And so the question is, what is that right balance? And it's important to note that if naturally occurring affordable housing in and of itself solved our housing challenges, most of our housing is more than 20 years old. Most of our housing is, what you would presume would be naturally occurring affordable housing, but because we don't have enough housing and it's not restricted, it goes up, and it goes up more than people can afford to pay. So we've got to strike that right balance. I agree with planning in some of the areas here. We're 10 times more housing and restricted housing than we have unrestricted naturally occurring affordable housing. In other areas, we're bringing a lot more housing, and about half of what would be non-restricted. But if we do nothing, or we don't do enough, the unrestricted naturally occurring affordable housing will also become unaffordable, because the finances of it will make sense to put a small amount of improvement into it and continue to charge more and more and more for the unit. So appreciate you fleshing that out. Do we have any other comments from other colleagues? I know, but thank you. I think it was an important thing to flesh out. I believe
I'd like to jump in.
Councilmember Mink had raised this and asked for this to be really delineated, and I think this is really a helpful discussion to really go, point by point within the plan to talk about what is happening and how we're addressing it. Let me turn to Councilmember Joanna.
Thank you. Agree. Really appreciate Councilmember Mink bringing this up, and I think we tend to have a version of this conversation in all the master plans I've been a part of. It's a really healthy and important one. Ms. Gavoni and team, just so I'm reading this right, the current, so under the existing zoning, little over 5,000 units, the maximum potential under the zoning that is being proposed, that we've largely approved here, about 19,000 units possible, correct?
Yeah, this is Clark Larson with Montgomery Planning. I'll answer, and maybe Lisa can correct me if I'm wrong. But what we looked at was how many units were in place today. So that's the 5,090 or so dwelling units in the plan area. and then assuming that all of the properties built out to their maximum potential under the recommended zone of the planning board draft, that is the total of a little over 19,000. So that's a potential for as many new units as you could get if all properties that allowed residential could build to those. So we're obviously just going to get a portion of that. So none of the theoretical maximums will actually happen, but that's the thought process we go through.
Right. So, okay, great. And that's what and then required under that recommended zoning would be the 2,548 dwelling units that are in the MPDU program.
Yes, following the 12.5% requirement, yes.
Right. So, Ms. Cavoni, you mentioned, one of my favorite and first plan, the Veersmill Master Plan, where we had a discussion in the context of, as you mentioned, there were 500 units in that Alpine View area, and it went to 2,500 or over 2,000 that could be allowed under the zoning that we ended up approving. In that plan, we did achieve functionally no net loss, correct?
Yes.
Right. And so when I look at these numbers, again, nothing has been built at Alpine View last time I drove by. Is someone else chiming in?
Oh, I'm sorry. We're just discussing the Alpine View property, correct? Not for the,
Yes.
we're discussing the Veersmill property, not the other properties in the Veersmill plan. Ms. Dunn, do
Yeah,
you?
well, which I thought that was the example you used, but maybe I misspoke. But I heard you use the 500 to 2,000 example.
I think the
which
clarification is whether it's plan-wide or whether it's
Right.
Alpine View property specific.
Right, I just wanted to clarify that the no net loss was for that property.
Yes.
Rock Creek Woods was another property where it was recognized due to environmental constraints. As much as we'd want to say no net loss for that property in the future, it was never going to work.
It was difficult.
And so,
Yeah, sure.
just to clarify that in Veersmill, this was a great conversation, and one of the first times we'd ever had it, and we did look at it sort of property by property. We did not do it plan-wide.
Plan-wide, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a good point. I appreciate you bringing that up. I mean, obviously, I think even on that property, the likelihood of seeing the max build out, is, we'll see what happens. We would love to see it, but it hadn't happened yet. And so we have to use the tools we have. And it is different looking property to property and plan wide, but that was a marker. And those percentages, if you look at that, are pretty similar to what we're seeing here in that, you have you have the 9,000 units or 5,000 units, and now we're going to just under 20,000. So and again, I know it's not apples to apples, it's plan wide versus property specific, but I think you're still not going to have max build out in either scenario. So as far as using it as a proxy, I just don't know why we wouldn't want to have a stronger set of language to make sure we don't lose at least those 5,000. If we're going to go to 20,000, even if we go to 15,000 or whatever it is over the course of the plan, is there a way to, as opposed to just saying, which, strive for, which we acknowledge is not, does not have much of any teeth in it, to make sure we really, really want to say, if we're going to go to just under 20,000 units, or if we're going to significantly expand, we expect to have, not less displacement. I'm sorry, go ahead, Ms. Dunn.
I think the issue comes down to that last district, the residential neighborhoods, where, when we look at the number of existing today and then the number that can be built in the future, and that delta wasn't huge. We had, that's where a lot of existing multifamily is today, but those changes in zoning weren't dramatic because it was sort of saying, we recognize these communities exist, and they feel relatively stable. And as Ms. Scavone mentioned, we didn't have property owners coming to the table saying we are ripe for redevelopment, which really was part of the issue with the Veersmill. So I think if you required it and you have this district where you haven't increased zoning very much at all, a lot of this was a reconfirmation, returning that as all affordable under a regulated affordable scheme would require a public-private partnership. I don't think those private property owners with, say 100 units under R30 moving forward are going to be able to return them as all regulated, which would mean no net loss, right? So, and they don't have the zoning to go up by 4 times to compensate them financially for that. So that it's sort of that district where we're running into
I get
trouble.
your point. Yeah, I get your point. And again, another reason it's different looking property, property by property versus, or even district to district versus plan wide. I think we can continue to refine this in our tools and strategies, but I appreciate the exercise. I do. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And, I think I think why this was a helpful exercise is actually if you look at property by property, neighborhood by neighborhood here, there are some neighborhoods where we're going 10 times, and there are other neighborhoods where we're not. So, it is kind of similar. I think it was arrived from a different mechanism. In the Veers Mill plan, there were literal conversations and discussions and negotiations, occurring where we had a sense of what those deals were going to be. In this case, it's more, allowing the process to take hold. And I will also say, I think in Veers Mill, we were basing a lot of that on the county and on our ability to get Bushy Drive done. And, that has turned into a major project here. We have the opportunity to do that in a few sites as part of this plan, as we all know. And I think the county really needs to be driving that forward. And I think that is, really the best tool in our toolkit here is to really, push on the public lands, public properties. The council has been a real leader on that. I've pushed for legislation myself. The council has overwhelmingly supported both the last council and this council. I think there's more work that we can do in that front with more tools, but I appreciate you fleshing that out further as well, Councilmember Chawanda. Okay, so I don't think we have any proposals or recommendations here, but this was a helpful exercise. Why don't we move on, because there actually is some related language that's been recommended based on the Veers Mill plan. We've done a little massaging of the language, so to speak. So why don't I turn to you, Ms. Dunn? You can share that with us.
Great, thank you. That is true, and thank you to Councilmember Mink, because just posing the question about displacement, while we knew there was plan-wide recommendation related to wanting to support protection against displacement of the residents in this area, going back and looking at other plans to see how had we phrased this before, found language in the Veers Mill plan, and as you can see on the bottom of page 14, I think it would be useful to add this phrasing as well to what's already in the Fairland plan, because I think it does strengthen this idea of how can we make sure as we review development applications, the idea that current residents are respected and tried to give them the ability to come back if they so desire.
Okay, well, is there agreement? I think there's consensus on that language. We've got thumbs up and a yes,
Great.
and so without objection, thank you for that.
Thank you. With that, I am going to turn it back over to Mr. Kenny to have a conversation with you about undergrounding utilities, and then after that, there's going to be one last section to cover a couple of loose ends.
Thank you. We'll see if we can keep the lucky streak going here. This section is responding to the conversation we had towards the end of last week's work session about the 3 recommendations to underground utilities throughout the master plan area. I think everyone involved is in favor of undergrounding utilities as a public good. I think the question came about of whether inserting this into the development review process would be too onerous on developers and stifle investment in the master plan area. Council staff, we worked with planning, MCDOT, and within council to kind of come up with some language that would both emphasize the need for undergrounding utilities and provide some flexibility to the planning board if a developer wants to come in and undergrounding utilities is, like, for whatever reason, truly not feasible. So our recommendation, provided by planning staff at our request, this is not necessarily their favored language. The planning expressed to me that their favored language is still the language that is in the plan, but provided this to us upon request. Council staff recommends adding, where feasible, to each of these undergrounding utilities sections to go in line with, if you flip to the next page, page 16, some of the other recent language in similar master plans. The where feasible is a direct quote in the Veers Mill Corridor Master Plan. Forest Glen Montgomery Hills suggests prioritizing undergrounding of utilities. The White Flint Sector Plan recommends undergrounding utilities. Bethesda Downtown Plan says underground utilities wherever possible. The Silver Spring Downtown and Adjacent Communities Plan is more direct about requesting the existing utilities be undergrounded. But other than that, these other plans are a little more flexible. And so council staff is recommending this where feasible language to sort of go along with what other plans have done and toe that line between those two objectives.
The priority and the practicality. Okay. Appreciate the work there and taking some of the views into consideration. Any response from colleagues? Councilmember Joando?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you. And I also appreciate the work and the responsiveness to the request to go back and look at, other plans. I think I mentioned, last week when we took this up that while that would be helpful, and we do have, and this is an area, as we've all talked about, and I think this plan goes in a really great direction in trying to help address some of the inequities and disinvestment of the past, particularly as it relates to how it's been zoned and public and private investment in these areas. I do think that having a stronger language, like is in the Silver Spring Downtown and Adjacent Communities Plan, and in this case, I think it would just be sticking with the original planning language based on the conversation we had last time, is where we should be. As I expressed last time, this would be in the plan I went back and read it and read it again, that it does, the language that you all suggested does talk about a public-private partnership to achieve this on these areas, on these kind of discrete areas where it would be very needed for safety reasons, for ADA, for the ability to get around, and obviously for the aesthetic, but not as importantly, tree coverage, other things that were discussed. These are very hot areas as well. So I do think we should stick with the original language in realizing, as the plan does, that this would most likely be a public-private partnership, and we all have an interest in making sure that it happens. It's not saying the whole area, it's saying these specific areas. So I would still like to recommend that we stick with the original planning language.
Thank you. Councilmember Fanny Gonzalez.
Yes, I will also stick with what I said last time. I see this also as a response to the extreme weather that we're getting. These high, really heavy rains that are happening. Just this past summer was terrible in my district. Lots of people without power because the lines were down. I'm going to stick with the planning board original language. So.
All right. Before I make my decision here, although I think the vote has already been cast, can you just explain? Can we hear from planning? And you explained before about safety and other issues, but do you think that the recommendation Forest Glen Montgomery Hills plan was only a few years ago, that basically viewed this as a public benefit to say, we want to have underground utilities where possible, and we will utilize public benefits, understanding that the private developer can only bear so much of the costs. My personal perspective is I agree with undergrounding of utilities, but I think that it should be at least a shared cost because it's a shared benefit. And I don't think that a new development is changing the need to underground utilities, and for that to be a surcharge on getting the housing that we need or the community benefits that we need, the commercial that we want, turning parking lots into actual places and spaces for people. I'm afraid that it is going to be cost prohibitive. The, tens of millions of dollars just in the priority areas that we talked about would make investment in these areas very, very challenging without significant public support. So could you just talk about the thinking of in Montgomery Hills, Forest Glen is not some old plan that, is on a shelf somewhere. It has barely even begun its implementation, and how, what the standard would be there versus here.
Yeah, so I worked on Forest Glen before moving from Mid-County to Up-County, so it was definitely understanding of that particular project and how, the financing and how that worked. I would say that not just that recent master plan, but in plans over the last decade, we are moving more and more towards wanting utilities undergrounded, regardless of where they're at in the county, for the reasons that we previously stated, whether it's environmental resiliency, reliability of that grid. Again, the more utilities are undergrounded, typically the less disruption that those residents experience. There are concerns about down trees, about sort of the excessive wires that are hung. So for us, yes, in addition to our recent plans, it's been a trend that we've been trying to deal with over the last 10 plus years.
Could I ask some more? Because I agree with you. I agree with everything that you've said, that we all want undergrounding of utilities, it sounds like.
Right.
The question is who pays for it and whether or not it is a requirement of redevelopment. So the more direct question is, does the planning department feel that undergrounding of utilities is a cost that can be absorbed while maximizing the zoning as recommended in this plan without any public subsidies?
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough question to answer. I'll say in general, we try to get it from the private side, from the developer on a given project. But again, it's really a case-by-case basis. I know I'm not trying to sidestep your question. I'm just saying it's a case-by-case basis because certain properties may not yield a certain density if they have, for instance, 3 rights-of-way and a massive amount of utilities. Speaking previously on our issue of proportionality, the planning board would have to take that into consideration on any case. So in some instances, my answer would say, yes, I think that they can do this on their own through their project. They do not need any public contribution. On another case, I may say, that's really unrealistic. This is going to kill this project. This project wouldn't move forward if they bore that cost by themselves.
So you're saying that the planning board, from your perspective, has the flexibility to determine feasibility on a case-by-case basis, whether we put where feasible or not?
Yes, and that would be utilities, that would be other public improvements that would be required of this plan as well.
If I can also just add, again, Tanya Stern, Acting Director, this very much is a topic of discussion when these applications come to the board, when the staff does recommend undergrounding utilities. And what I recall in certain instances, there may be, let's just say, hypothetically, 5 utility poles being recommended to be undergrounded. And based off of the analysis by the applicant, they may say, well, we can afford to do 3 of them or 2 of them, and here's where. And the board can consider that. It can still approve even if it's a partial undergrounding and not, sort of a full undergrounding. So these are very much discussed, as Patrick noted, on a case-by-case basis. We certainly look for opportunities to try to get as much undergrounding done as possible. I think realistically, we look to private development to try to do this because those projects tend to come forward more often. Certainly than opportunities, frankly, for the public sector to be able to help to fund these. But we still think that, regardless of who is paying for it, it is a larger issue that does require further discussion to look for solutions, because there are instances where there are developing applicants who can't afford to do the undergrounding. And so, again, we advise the board, and the board, makes decisions based on all those different factors.
Do you think having the where feasible language weakens your ability to request?
No.
So you think it makes no functional difference?
No.
Okay. All right.
I mean, I appreciated all the support for our language. To answer your question, where feasible, it was acceptable to us, so either one of those options are fine, I think.
Okay, I mean, I will say my preference is to have where feasible language, not because it changes the planning board's ability, which is my understanding, but because it sets a more realistic expectation in the community, which this is going to be an issue. Let me just put it out there, mark my words today. We've seen it in plan after plan after plan. There are going to be judgment calls that have to be made that we prioritize housing over undergrounding of utilities. And oftentimes that's the choice, the scale of a project, or whether or not a project can move forward. And planning staff and the planning board ultimately are going to make a recommendation and a decision on that development review. And community members are going to look at the master plan, and it's not going to say where feasible. It's going to say undergrounding of utilities. And they're going to say that you're not following the master plan. And that's where I'm concerned that if you're picking and choosing and making a feasibility determination, we should include that language because it sets a much more realistic expectation in the community. Having said that, I'm not going to argue with colleagues here. It's not enough of a functional difference. So I will, go with colleagues if that's where the will of the committee is to support the, language as drafted. But I just want to note, I do think it's going to set unrealistic expectations in the community, and I do have some concerns about that.
Yeah.
Councilmember Jawando.
Yeah, just want to say, appreciate the discussion and the work that's been done and the further analysis. If Ms. Stern, remember, I asked this line of questioning last time. Don't you already have the authority and I think we kind of got the answer here. But I do think there are expectations setting on all sides, right? We're setting expectations with the community. We're also setting expectations with the development community as part of the community about what we want them to do and come to the planning board with. And they're obviously all going to be watching this tape and watching what was said probably, or not all, but some will. Some of the attorneys will be. But I think saying that this is an expectation, and then knowing that the planning board will take this up as it does, as was just described, I think is the right way. Again, it's not a huge functional difference, but I do think it sets the expectation and the goal, which is the one that we want. So I appreciate the chairs joining on and appreciate the explanation.
Okay, sounds good. We'll just council's committee recommendation for supporting the language as introduced or as supported by the planning board. Great.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to section 6 here. I just labeled it other miscellaneous follow-up items. We had one which was a updated bikeways map that was, I think, requested from MCDOT, and planning staff made the changes to that that were requested, so it was attached on Circle 9. And then B was a clarification of the CE position on the zoning of the public properties that are associated with the East County Regional Service Center, Recreation Center, and BRT station. The motivation for reconfirming existing zoning came from a concern about compatibility with neighboring properties. So instead, council staff has suggested, and the CE will support, the planning board's recommended change in zoning with the addition of some language, which you can see council staff's recommended to be inserted between the 5th and 6th recommendations under this activity center. And it just reads that any redevelopment of public properties, including the ones I just noted, should provide adequate transitions between new development and existing neighborhoods through appropriate building heights and development intensities. And again, that just provides a little more protection given that change in zoning. I think that's it.
Okay, without objection, we'll accept all of those really mostly technical and clarification items as recommended by council staff. And unless there are any other, one other item that
Nope.
Ms. Dunn has?
It's not another item. I just wanted to let you know we do have a full council session scheduled. It's the 14th. It's next week. Because we have already covered the plan-wide recommendations within the last couple weeks, staff can be working on presenting that material to the council next Tuesday. So that is the goal. We'll do the overview of the intro to the plan and all the plan-wide recommendations. And then on the 28th, we come back and we will do the district level recommendations, which does include the zoning recommendations, plan implementation, and the fiscal impact statement. Those will be done on the 28th. If there's any questions on that or any desire to change that schedule, let me know.
Okay, so we're coming to full council the 14th for part 1, coming back for part 2 on the 28th. The committee has done such a terrific job that I'm hopefully this is buttoned up and folded and properly placed for our colleagues on the full council to take up the items with just consensus upon consensus, and we'll be ready to roll. With that, thank you very much to council staff, to DOT staff, to planning staff for all of your work. I will just say as we close this up from the committee, appreciate my colleagues on the committee, appreciate the district council member for joining us for all of our sessions, and appreciate everybody in the community. This has really been a community-based effort. We started with a public hearing in the community, which was a commitment that I made as chair, that we made as committee members, that the council president has been supportive of, as have all council members. I think that's going to be a model that we use for moving forward, and I think the planning department really did set a great tone here in its work over a significant period of time, doing tremendous amount of community outreach to meet people on their turf and their terms, to talk about their community and what they hoped and want to see, and what we think we need to achieve in order to move forward with our priorities and our emphasis on East County, which is great. And this is a really exciting starting off point for some of the really great things that are happening in the East County and Montgomery County. So with that, we have a committee recommendation. Should we take I think we should probably vote with a hand vote to recommend to send this as amended to the full council. We have 3 votes here and a supportive district council member, I believe. And with that, we have a recommendation, and we are adjourned.
Thanks.
Delay